Time now for Elena. She's here as ever at this time of day with the international newspapers, in fact, here on France 24. You're starting out with the news about those settlements in East Jerusalem. See Benjamin Netanyahu talk to today's Jerusalem Post about this.
Yes, he's given them a long and wide-ranging exclusive interview to commemorate the Jewish New Year, in which he does address this settlement issue. Now, he calls the Palestinians insisting on a settlement freeze cherry-picking one of the final core issues and making it a precondition. He says he wants talks with no preconditions. Of course, the Palestinians argue that building more settlements is changing the geographical reality on the ground and eating away at the land that would constitute a Palestinian state. The Jerusalem Post, of course, is a very pro-Netanyahu paper, so they don't really question him too closely on this. But he does tell them that even if it were necessary to enter back into talks with the quartet, with the US and EU, he will not freeze settlement building.
And another story in the Middle East. We've been talking, of course, about Syria and Libya a lot in the news bulletin over the last few days. You're going to take us back to Tunisia, though, where some would say the Arab Spring all began.
Yes, the Independent here has gone back to Sidi Bouzid, the place where the Arab Spring supposedly all began last January, when a young vegetable vendor set fire to himself. And the same journalist had been there 8 months ago, immediately after the fall of Ben Ali, and says the atmosphere then was celebratory. There were people exulting in the town's status as the birthplace of the Arab Spring. He's gone back there now, and the atmosphere is not like that at all. They say people worry that Sidi Bouzid has been relegated to a footnote in Tunisian history. They say the foreign media focused too much on one man and trivialised the Tunisian revolution. And now, 8 months later, the security forces are still putting ordinary people's lives in danger. People are being killed and beaten by police, and they're losing faith in the democratic institutions that have been created in Tunisia. There's elections coming up in just a month, but only half of the Tunisians eligible to vote have actually registered. So that shows a lot of people have really lost faith in their democratic process and don't believe these elections will actually bring about a fairer government.
Now, we had a big media scrum yesterday. This is over the trial of Michael Jackson. What are the papers saying about that?
Let's have a look at the Huffington Post. They ask in an article, is it actually Conrad Murray who's on trial, or is it Michael Jackson? They say what the jury will really be asked to decide is which version of the King of Pop they believe in. The prosecution will be painting him as an innocent victim who was exploited by a doctor who he just desperately needed to help him sleep, which is what the sedative propofol is for, of course, whereas the Conrad Murray's defence will be painting Jackson as a ruthless addict who was willing to do anything to get the drugs that he needed and who administered his own overdose, they're planning to argue. So the Huffington Post says it comes down in the end to what image of the King of Pop the jury are prepared to believe, and all of this is bound to come out, they say, even though the judge has specifically banned reference to Jackson's past drug abuse. They say it's all bound to come out in this trial.
Now, another court story which is in the papers is Amanda Knox's appeal trial for murdering her housemate Meredith Kercher. That began yesterday.
Actually, the closing arguments wound up yesterday of this appeal trial, so now she's waiting for the verdict to see if her conviction for murdering her housemate Meredith Kercher, a British student in 2007, will be quashed or not. Let's look at the Italian paper La Repubblica. They go back over some of these frankly bizarre arguments that have been made about Amanda Knox over the last few days. First, the prosecution called her a scheming witch who was enchanted by lust, and then the defence yesterday compared her to Jessica Rabbit, saying she was acting out of fidelity for her boyfriend. Now, The Guardian have a nice analysis piece in which they take apart some of this weird language that's been used in the Italian courts and say the Italian lawyers seem to be living in the 15th century when they said this kind of thing about women. They've even managed to look up some texts which date from the 1445, from witch trials that happened then in Perugia, that used almost exactly the same language as the lawyer Carlo Pacelli said yesterday, calling her a diabolic, satanic, demonic she-devil with twin souls, dirty on the inside and clean on the outside. The Guardian says that kind of hysteria has no place in a modern courtroom.
Indeed. All right, Elena, thank you very much. That's Elena here with her. Look through the international papers here on France 24.